Welcome to Lesson 7, Applications of Quadratic Relationships, Part 2. So we've done quadratic relationships. We've seen the quadratic function being used to model several different situations. We're going to continue on with some of these scenarios, but today focus on the vertex, or the max or min values. So what is the vertex of a parabola, and what does the vertex actually represent? So in order to answer this, we're going to look at vertex form. So let's say we have f of x is equal to ax minus h squared plus k. Again, based on this formula, we know already that the vertex occurs at h, comma, k. This can represent one of two things. It can represent a maximum or a minimum value. So if our parabola look like this, that means the k here, so the vertex is hk, and the k represents the maximum value. On the other hand, if I had a parabola that opened up like this, again, my vertex here is hk, and here k represents a minimum value. So why is the vertex so useful? Because the vertex tells us the tip of the parabola, and this can either tell us if it's a maximum or what the maximum value is if the parabola opens down, so if there's a negative in front of the a, or the k can tell us what the minimum value is if the parabola opens up and the a is a positive value. So we're going to look at word problems that really help us to look at the vertex and make certain conclusions based on the vertex. So before we do that, let's look at how we can find vertices. This should be completely reviewed, so find the vertex for the following parabolas, indicate whether the vertex represents a maximum or minimum, and indicate the maximum or minimum value. So let's take a look at this first example. We have an equation in vertex form. So remember to find the vertex here. The h is 6 here, so we take the opposite, -6, and copy down the -2. To determine if this is a maximum or minimum, if this parabola has a maximum or minimum, let's take a look at this. The a value is negative, so we know it's going to open down. Again, this is not this specific parabola. All we know is that it opens down. And because it opens down, we know that it has a max value. And the max value is always represented by the k. So the max value here is -2. Let's take a look at this second parabola. Here we're given the graph of the parabola. To find the vertex, we can just read it right off the graph. So here, the vertex is here. 1, -4 is our vertex. Because I see the graph, I see that it opens up, and I see that this represents a minimum value. So the min value, again, it's the k value, is -4. In other words, that's the smallest y value this parabola can have, or the max value, -2, is the largest y value this parabola can have. The next example here, it says f of x is equal to 2x squared plus 4x minus 1. You should recognize that this is in standard form, but in order to get the vertex, we need vertex form. So in order to do that, to go from standard to vertex, we complete the square. So remember, with completing the square, we're going to factor out the a from the first two terms. So 2 times x squared gives me 2x squared, and 2 times 2x will get me the 4x. Then you leave a lot of space and copy down the c value. Now, using your new b value, you have to come up with b over 2 squared. So in this case, we have 2 as our b value, so 2 over 2 squared. And when we do that, we have 1 squared, which is just equal to 1. So when we get our b over 2 squared value, remember, we're going to add the 1, but also subtract the 1. Then in our next step, we copy down the a. We copy down these 3 terms because we want them included within our bracket. but we don't want the -1 in our bracket. But we can't just take it out. We need to always multiply it out by the a value. So 2 times -1 is just -2, and then I'll copy down the -1. And in the last step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do two things. I'm going to factor this, and I'm just going to add or subtract the two terms at the end. So that's just -3. When I factor this, I have x and x, 1 and 1, and I'll put pluses to get me to the 2x in the middle. Again, I'm not going to do the factoring steps because you should be familiar with that. And I can write this as 2x plus 1 squared minus 3. So now that we have our answer in vertex form, or equation in, or function in, sorry. Now that we have our function in vertex form, we can write our vertex. So our vertex is just the opposite of this, so -1 and -3. And again, if we take a look at our equation, we see that the a value is positive, so this parabola would open up, so it's going to have a minimum value of -3. So this is stuff you should have already learned in the previous unit. We're going to now take this information, take these skills on how to find the vertex, and apply them to new problems.